Welcome back to the Lore Vault. It's good to see you here, seeker of stories. When Howard Carter uncovered the tomb of Tutankhamun in 1922, he expected the burial of a king, grand, deliberate, and unmistakably royal. Instead, he stepped into something that has puzzled archaeologists for more than a century. A royal tomb that behaves nothing like a royal tomb. From the very first glance, nothing about Tutankhamun's resting place felt right. Royal burials were architectural statements, wide corridors, large halls, careful orientations, planned for decades. But Tutankhamun's tomb was small, cramped, and asymmetrical. It looked rushed, improvised. It resembled the tomb of a high-ranking noble, or perhaps a queen, but not a pharaoh of Egypt. The evidence for this haste was not just a feeling, it was physical. When conservators examined the wall paintings in the burial chamber, they found microbes embedded deep in the pigment. Microbes that can only form when a tomb is sealed before the paint is fully dry.
Think about that. The greatest, most ritual-obsessed civilization in history sealed their god-king's eternal home while the paint was still wet. This was not a planned, stately, royal funeral. This was a crisis, an improvisation, a patchwork burial assembled in a panic. Why? Why would Egypt, a civilization that mastered eternity, be forced to rush the burial of its king? The answer is not a curse. The answer is a cover-up. The evidence shows that this tomb was a last-minute scramble, a story of political intrigue, artifacts repurposed, and a desperate power struggle. This investigation is not about how Tutankhamun died. It is about why he was buried this way, because the evidence is overwhelming. This tomb was never, ever meant for him, and the secret it's still hiding may be one of the greatest mysteries of all.
Part 1. Evidence A. The Queen's Blueprint.
The first file in this cold case is the architecture itself, the blueprint. To a modern eye, a tomb is a tomb. To an ancient Egyptian, it was a precise, symbolic machine. And the machine of Tutankhamun is built all wrong. For centuries, pharaohs of the New Kingdom were buried in the Valley of the Kings. Their tombs followed a strict, symbolic, and unbending rule. As the king's sarcophagus, representing the sun god, made its journey into the underworld, the tomb's main corridor was designed to turn to the left. This was the path of a king. Tutankhamun's tomb turns to the right. This is not a trivial detail. It is not an architect's whim. In Egyptian funerary architecture, a right-hand turn was the layout reserved for queens. From the moment Carter stepped inside, the tomb was screaming that it was designed for a woman. The size confirms it. It is small, cramped, and lacks the grand-scale corridors and halls associated with a pharaoh's multi-decade construction project. It simply does not have the footprint
of a king.
This architectural anomaly has led researchers to a stunning yet logical conclusion. Tutankhamun was placed in a tomb that was originally built for someone else. And given the female-oriented layout, the list of candidates is short. Many Egyptologists, looking at the layout, the period, and the political chaos, believe this tomb was originally commissioned for one of the most powerful and enigmatic women in history, Queen Nefertiti. This is the foundational mystery. If this was her tomb, why is he in it? What happened to his original kingly, left-turning tomb? And most importantly, if he is in her tomb, where is she? This single architectural mistake opens the entire investigation. It suggests a disruption, a sudden change of plans so violent that it forced the priesthood to break their most sacred architectural rules. They needed a body buried, and they needed it done fast. So they used the first available high-status tomb they could find, a queen's tomb.
Part 2. Evidence B. The recycled artifacts. If the tomb's architecture was the first sign of improvisation, the artifacts inside are the final proof. This was not a burial. It was an estate sale. It was a collection of high-status objects gathered hastily and repurposed for a king they needed to get underground. When Carter's team began the multi-year process of cataloging the 5,000 objects, they started noticing disturbing inconsistencies. The jewelry. On some of the king's magnificent jewelry, conservators found signs of recarving. Names had been altered. The original royal cartouches had been erased, and Tutankhamun's name carved over them. The coffins. Even his magnificent set of nested coffins appears to have been repurposed from earlier burials. The attributions and styles are inconsistent, suggesting they were not created as a single set for him. The canopic shrine. This sacred object, meant to hold the king's internal organs, is one of the most beautiful pieces in the tomb. But it too tells the story of the patchwork burial. The inscriptions on it seem to be added at the last moment, almost as an afterthought. These are not the signs of a divine pharaoh's planned 70-day mummification and burial ceremony. These are the signs of a team scrambling to assemble a royal burial kit from whatever was available in the workshops, or, more troublingly, from other, earlier burials. This practice of recycling artifacts wasn't unheard of in Egypt, but never for a pharaoh's primary burial. It was an act of disrespect and admission of failure. This wasn't a failure of resources. This was a failure of time. They were running out of time. The paint was still wet. They were grabbing anything that looked royal, recarving the names, and shoving it into a tomb that wasn't his. But all of these recycled pieces, the jewelry, the coffins, the shrines, are just the opening act, the most iconic, the most famous,
and the most damning piece of evidence was staring them in the face. The centerpiece of the entire burial, the golden mask. Part 3. Exhibit C. The borrowed mask. It is the most famous artifact in human history, the golden funerary mask of Tutankhamun, a symbol of ancient Egypt itself, flawless, iconic, and unforgettable. And for decades, scholars have quietly avoided one troubling question. The mask was not made for him. For a long time, this idea was dismissed as fringe speculation. But as technology improved, the evidence became irrefutable. The mask, like the tomb, tells a story of appropriation, a story that points directly to a female ruler.
The first hint is easy to overlook, but impossible to ignore. The mask has pierced ears. Adult male pharaohs, in their formal divine funerary depictions, were not shown with earrings. Pierced ears were a feature reserved for queens or for young children. A king who died at 19 would not have been depicted this way in his most sacred eternal image. This detail alone raised suspicion, but the forensic evidence is what breaks the case open. Modern imaging and forensic reconstructions of Tutankhamun's skull revealed something shocking. The mask's facial proportions, the jawline, the cheeks, the eyes do not match the boy king's actual bone structure.
They do, however, align far more closely with the famous known depictions of another royal figure, the same figure whose tomb this likely was, Queen Nefertiti. The idea that Tutankhamun was buried wearing Nefertiti's mask is unthinkable, but the material evidence makes it undeniable. 1. The gold itself. The mask is not made from a single uniform piece of gold, as a royal commission would be. The face is a purer, reddish-toned gold. The rest of the mask, the headdress, is a different alloy with a yellower hue. They were made at different times from different sources. This is not a single object, it's a composite. 2. The beard. The famous plaited beard of the pharaoh tells the same story. Its attachment points do not fit the curvature of the chin. The welding doesn't match the face. The beard, a symbol of male kingship, was clearly added later. It was a last-minute modification to make a feminine object look suitable for a king. 3. The smoking gun. In 2015, conservators studying the mask performed X-ray scans on the back. Beneath Tutankhamun's cartouche, they found the ghosts of an older inscription, a name that had been carefully hammered out and replaced.
That original name was feminine, and the titulary style matched the royal titles Nefertiti used when she held pharaonic power. This is the final, irrefutable proof. The face, with its delicate contours and elongated eyes, was crafted for her. The masculine beard was tacked on. Tutankhamun's name was literally stamped over hers. This single artifact explains the entire mystery. The sudden death, the 70-day burial deadline. The workshops had no time to craft a new mask of this complexity, so they went to the storerooms. They found the unused funerary equipment of Queen Nefertiti, whose own burial had clearly been disrupted or cancelled. They took her mask, they added a beard, they changed the name, and they buried a king in a queen's mask inside a queen's tomb with paint still wet on the walls.
We are piecing together a 3,000-year crime scene. If you believe this investigation must continue, subscribe to this channel and join the search for what was lost. The cover-up doesn't end here. This is not just a story of haste. It is a story of ambition.
Part 4. Evidence D. The political motive.
Why all the haste? What crisis could be so profound that it would force the priesthood to commit these acts of near sacrilege? The answer, as always in Egypt, is politics. Tutankhamun ruled in the immediate chaotic aftermath of the most radical period in Egyptian history, the Amarna Revolution. His predecessor, Akhenaten, likely his father, was a heretic. He had tried to destroy Egypt's entire pantheon of gods, replacing them with a single deity, the Aten. He moved the capital, defunded the priesthoods, and plunged the nation into chaos. Tutankhamun was the restorer. His very name, Tutankhamun, means living image of Amun. He was the king who reversed the revolution, abandoned his city, and restored power and wealth to the traditional priests of Amun-Ra. He should have been their hero. They should have given him the grandest burial in history as thanks for saving their religion. But that is not what happened. His name appears rarely after his death. His monuments were often destroyed or usurped. The priesthood he saved seems to have treated him as an afterthought. Why?
Because Tutankhamun died young, at 19, with no heir, and his death created a power vacuum. The man who stepped into that vacuum was an elderly, high-ranking court official named Ai, who had served Akhenaten and then Tutankhamun. Ai, who married Tutankhamun's young widow, likely to legitimize his claim. Ai, who became the next pharaoh. Now, the evidence becomes circumstantial but damning. Look at the tomb of Ai himself. It contains artwork nearly identical to Tutankhamun's, but more elaborate, larger, and better finished. It is as if the burial resources that should have gone to Tutankhamun were redirected to Ai.
This paints a sinister picture. The young king dies unexpectedly. The ambitious vizier Ai sees his chance. To become pharaoh, he needs to be pharaoh. And the first duty of a new pharaoh is to bury the old one. He needs to get Tutankhamun in the ground, fast, to finalize the transition of power. There is no time to build a proper tomb.
There is no time to craft a new mask. So I gives the order. Take the queen's tomb, the one that's empty. Take her mask, the one from the storeroom. Add a beard, change the name. Get the paint on the walls and seal it. We have a funeral to finish.
A, in this theory, didn't just take Tutankhamun's throne. He took his burial. He usurped the resources intended for the boy king and used them for his own, grander tomb. He pushed Tutankhamun aside, not only in life, but in death, burying him in a borrowed tomb, with a borrowed mask, in a ceremony so rushed, it borders on disrespect. This explains the why. It explains the haste. It explains the mismatched, patchwork nature of the entire burial. It is a story of ambition, a power grab, and a burial that was, in essence, a political prop. And yet, this theory, as complete as it sounds, may only be half the story, because the tomb itself may still be hiding its biggest secret.
Part 5. Evidence E. The Sealed Secret. The story does not end with I. The tomb itself, the cramped, makeshift tomb, may have been chosen for a very specific reason. What if it wasn't just available? What if it was strategic? Tutankhamun's tomb, as we know it, may just be a false front. It may be, quite literally, an antechamber, a front room leading to something larger. In 2015, high-resolution radar scans were performed on the walls of Tutankhamun's burial chamber. The scans detected unusual anomalies, voids, straight edges, the unmistakable signature of sealed, undiscovered rooms hidden behind the north and west walls.
This changes everything. Suddenly, the small, cramped tomb isn't a tomb. It's a corridor. The wet paint isn't just a sign of haste. It's a sign of a crew sealing a front room before moving on to the real burial. If a hidden chamber truly exists, what does it hold? The conclusion is almost inescapable. If this was Nefertiti's tomb and Tutankhamun was placed in the antechamber, then what lies behind the wall? The long-lost, untouched, and true burial of Queen Nefertiti herself.
Her disappearance from the archaeological record is one of history's greatest mysteries. This single theory explains everything, all at once. It explains the mismatched artifacts. They were her artifacts, and Tut's team simply borrowed some for his burial, leaving the rest sealed with her. It explains the strange orientation. It was her tomb, and he was just an add-on. It explains the hurried burial. I wasn't just burying a king. He was sealing a secret. He was walling off the tomb of the controversial queen, using Tut's burial as the perfect plug to hide the entrance forever. The debate over the scans continues. Other scans have questioned the results. Egyptian authorities, understandably, have resisted any invasive, destructive exploration. Whatever lies behind those walls remains sealed.
Part 6.
The final conclusion, the great mistake.
So, let us return to the central question. Why is Tutankhamun's tomb a patchwork mess? Why was it so rushed that the paint was still wet? Because it was never meant for him. The tomb, the mask, the artifacts, they are all part of a 3,000-year-old crime scene. A story of crisis, ambition, and improvisation. It was a political cover-up, orchestrated by an ambitious successor, who hijacked the royal burial system for his own gain. He shoved the boy king into a borrowed tomb, wearing a borrowed mask to legitimize his own claim to the throne.
The tomb of Tutankhamun does not behave like a deliberate royal resting place. It behaves like something assembled in a crisis, a placeholder, a backup plan. Howard Carter's miracle, the discovery of a perfectly intact royal tomb, was, in fact, the discovery of the one mistake Egypt failed to hide. For centuries, Egypt's priesthoods were masters of curating their own history. They erased names, tore down monuments, and hid secrets with terrifying efficiency. But here, in the chaos of the Amarna aftermath, in the rush to bury a king and crown another, they made a mistake. They left the evidence behind.
The real mystery of Tutankhamun is not the curse that supposedly killed his excavators. The real mystery is the political crisis that forced his burial. A crisis so severe it shattered Egypt's most sacred traditions. A crisis that echoes the same patterns of erased texts, missing individuals, and suppressed knowledge seen across all of Egypt's hidden history. The tomb is not just an archaeological discovery. It is a crack in the surface, a flaw in an elaborate system designed to bury secrets deep beneath sand and stone. And the strangest part? The greatest secret of all, the final resting place of one of history's most powerful women, may still be lying there, undisturbed, just inches away, hidden behind a wall of paint that never even had the time to dry.
What do you think? Is Tutankhamun's tomb a simple rushed burial, or is it the antechamber to Nefertiti's lost tomb? Let us know your theory in the comments below, and continue this journey with us. Until next time, keep seeking the Lord.
Thanks for watching. Until next time, keep seeking the lore.